Welcome, everyone, to Meetings and Miles. I am Pamela, and this is my co host, Mark. How are you today, Mark?
I'm doing awesome today, Pamela. I learned a pretty cool hack the other day, which I don't know why I didn't think of it before. It's someone had to explain it to me. When you're on a Zoom or other kind of conference call thing, turn off your self view. Like you wouldn't bring a mirror to an in-person meeting. So why do you need to look at yourself on screen? And when you think about it, you see all these people fixing their hair, they had hair, adjusting
Guilty.
themselves. You don't need to do that. So turn off your self view because it's super distracting. But then this is not a online meeting podcast. This is a travel podcast. So how have things been you,
Oh,
Pamela?
now, Mark, it is a business travel podcast, but Zoom is absolutely part of the game, right? Like when we're doing our prep for business travel, we're getting ready to go to different meetings, seeing different clients, going to different events. We are definitely leveraging and warming up our relationships in between travels and before travels if it's for the first time. So that's a very valid tip. And I can absolutely use it myself, to be honest.
No, stop it. That's fair. But we have another great guest today, someone whom you've known from your aviation days, not my aviation days. I just met him for the first time today. So tell us, Pamela, a little bit about our guest.
Yes, today we welcome Connor Sheridan, and he's a vice president at Voyager Aviation. And he really explains the global presence that Voyager has and all of the various services and products and everything that they're offering. But it's a very interesting perspective that Connor brings from the aviation side that can really maybe help enlighten everybody on the different ways and that business travel is incorporated and maybe in the ways it's evolved as well. So, very interesting conversation. I really adore Connor and was so happy to have him on the show.
Well, fantastic. Well, with that, let's get right into our interview with Connor.
All right, welcome, Connor.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and good afternoon.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us. I'd love to start things off if you could just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
No, certainly. So my name's Connor Sheridan. I reside here in Toronto, Ontario. I work in aviation in the business development and commercial side of the business. I've been with a company called Voyager Aviation for it'll be 11 years this May since graduation. Always been in the commercial and business development side of the business. Voyager is a regional aviation services company. Gives 360 degrees of support. We fly airplanes, we lease them, we, do heavy maintenance and modification on our own airplanes as well as customers. And we also have a very large parts business that supports everything across the regional front. So we're a regional aircraft, specific platform. And this is actually where Pamela and I met not too many years ago when we were starting to grow the parts business, which is now taken off beyond what our not wildest dreams, but has done exceeded expectations. And I think a big reason of that is the work that Pamela did in starting to
Oh,
to build that business.
oh,
That
Connor. I didn't even tell him to say that.
what do you love about the aviation industry?
I I love that the dynamic nature of it. So even in, some of the most mundane roles, I think in that industry, every day is going to be different. Or you arrive at work and you can have a plan and for what your day is going to look like, and one phone call or one email can completely turn that on its head. Which isn't for everybody, but it certainly is a draw to the industry for me because it's always changing. I've never been bored. I've never finished a work week and been, oh, that was really mundane and boring and disinteresting. So that's my favorite part of the industry. And there is a saying that it's not a job, it's an illness or a lifestyle, and I certainly believe that because, as I'm sure Pamela will tell you. I am very
Uh-huh.
infected with said aviation industry illness.
Yes. And like Mark too and I, like we all share this aviation background and you are still in it. And I mean, this conversation is definitely making me think about aviation a lot more. But I was even going to say, Connor, like you've been in aviation all in from the beginning, right? Like day one, like literally.
Yeah, I went to school for finance and I started when I was 19 or no, 20 years old as a co-op student at Voyager. Moved to North Bay for the summer, so and I've been with them ever since because they really, gave me a fantastic opportunity to grow within the organization. Extremely interesting work and, had a really great growth plan and trajectory. So it's and given the opportunity to travel the world to places I didn't even know existed till I started working there. So it's been a great opportunity.
That's cool. Let's unpack the travel side of things. This being a business travel podcast, where are some of the highlights? You said you've been all over the world. You are there places you go to more regularly, or where are some of your go tos?
Yeah, it's been depending on what role I was in or the type of business that we were chasing at the time, it kind of goes in ebbs and flows. So there'd be times where I, would spend quite a bit of time in Europe at conferences or meeting with
Mhm.
customers, down to the US in the same sort of vein, the large, MRO Americas, the when the RAA would have their show, the ISTATs, or the operators conferences, depending on the platform. And then a large part of Voyager's operation has been for NGOs through Africa and the Middle East. So I've had the opportunity to travel to many of our base locations in, Uganda, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Central African Republic, Ethiopia.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've got to see again. I definitely couldn't have pointed out Juba, South Sudan on a map before I started working at Voyager. But I've had the pleasure of spending a few days there a couple times.
That is the remarkable thing about business travel is that all the places you get to see that you never would in a million years as a tourist, but they're so fantastic.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I think if through piece of advice that I give people that or friends that are talking about, oh well, how do you make the most of a business trip? Because sometimes it can get depending, long days, you're just in the jet lag, there have been
Mhm.
trips where it's, oh, what was, the first couple times I went to Amsterdam, I think it was, you know, hotel, airport, hotel, meeting room, Uber, restaurant, hotel room. Like, I saw nothing
Yeah.
of the city, and it was only until one time I got lucky enough where we finished kind of a Friday morning, and then I didn't fly out till Saturday afternoon, so I had, kind of a, Friday afternoon and Friday night in Amsterdam to actually go and, experience, the parts of that, wonderful city.
Mm. Mhm. Yes, no, for sure. And this is actually with all of your different tours, it's making me think of a question that we love to ask. And do you have a favorite airport?
I I do, and I knew this was going to be asked, so I had to think about it for a while. So I'll give two, and one's a completely off the wall answer that I'll know a lot of people disagree with, but I think my actual favorite is Vancouver, and I just went through there
Mm.
recently, which is why it reminded me of like, okay, this is, it's never too hectic. It has great lounges. It has good dining options. You can see the mountains, when it's even if
Mm.
it is raining. I do think it's a very nice and I think aesthetically
Mm.
it's pleasing. I would give it top marks for airports not only in Canada or North America but in Europe as well. My
Nice.
favorite one to pass through or be in is actually Addis in Ethiopia
Oh,
because of the
really?
chaos
Ah.
because
Yes.
it's just so chaotic and you're always landing from an overnight flight, so you take off at midday, land at 6 in the morning, and you don't even need to have a coffee because it's just so chaotic going through the security checkpoint that you're just immediately woken up and it reminds you that you're in a completely different place from where you came from. So I've always found like a part of excitement. I know
Mhm.
people will disagree with this, but it's certainly, some of the most chaotic experiences I've had have been transitioning through or, transiting through that airport, but I wouldn't trade them.
Wow, I've never been through that airport yet. So
Oh, I
been through some
have.
chaotic airports though.
That's incredible. And then like thinking of these like chaotic, sometimes everything's very focused on your trip and sometimes there's chaotic transitions. Like are there any stories that come to mind of a particularly crazy travel experience that you've experienced?
Yeah, there's a couple. The trip I was just on in Australia was the first week was quite busy where I was moving, to again take a look at airplanes that we had on lease to customers there. So it was, 5 nights you're, 5 days you're in a different city every day, so you're just constantly moving. So that is, certainly is very busy, and then trying to still stay on track with work back home with the time difference. So that's always
Mm.
very chaotic. The most chaotic I've had though was actually flying out of Bangui with your old boss, Pamela, which it was. I'm sure they have their act together now, so I don't want to disparage the people of the Bangui airport or the airline I was flying on, but they were handwritten boarding passes and it was check-in
Oh.
process. We arrived 3 hours before the flight, and I barely made the flight for reasons I'll
Oh.
explain. So they were doing one flight at a time, but it was handwritten boarding passes. So they would write down all the information, and then they forgot to give me a sequence number. So
Mm.
when I went to go to the gate agent to, board the flight, they're like, you don't have a sequence number, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what do I do at this point? My colleague, Pamela's old boss, is headed off to the airplane, so like I'm on my own now, and they're like, well, you got to go back and get one, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Like we're gonna get a sequence number, let's sort this out, and then there was someone else behind me that I think was in the same predicament. Then all of a sudden, and they speak, the main language is French. My French is awful. They didn't speak a whole lot of English, so this was kind of a bit of broken communication. They just grab my passport and my ticket and go away, and I'm like, okay, this isn't great. Like, like, and the
No.
flight, like, I'm watching everyone board on the flight. Like, we're the last two people, and it was a case where you had to go out, get your bag searched for minerals or
Uh,
contraband again, and then walk up the air stair to the airplane. And I'm watching them board. I'm going, oh, this isn't good. Like, our
oh.
company has a base there, so it wasn't like I would be completely stranded and on my own. So this wasn't dire straits, but the flight was only once a week, so I was not looking forward to having to spend another week in
And they've
Bangui.
got your
Um,
passport, they have your boarding pass, and you're
yes,
watching my old boss board without you. He's
yep.
like,
So
see you
tomorrow,
later.
I think, yeah, and I think one of the lessons from one of your earlier episodes was if you got your passport, cash, or visa, and a computer, you can sort everything
Yeah.
out. So I've now lost two of those. So I'm really, I'm really not looking good. So this person comes back and is like, well, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but we can't let you board without a sequence number. And again, everything is handwritten. So I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I can see on the piece of paper that like my sequence number is 77. So like they just like, and that's what this gate agent's checking it against. And we
Oh.
came, I don't want to give away too much, but we came to an agreement of how to get a sequence number. Um, I then, went through the checkpoint, had my bag searched again, and then boarded the flight. And of course, I get on, and now I'm like super stressed because, like, and it's,
Yeah.
again, it's super hot, so I'm sweating, I'm nervous. I walk up to the airplane, and there's Pamela's boss with a champagne, being like, "Oh, where were you?" I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!"
I gotta show my ignorance here. Where is Bangui?
It's in the Central African Republic, so
Mm.
Okay,
in the yeah middle of Africa. So we were there. We
nice.
had an aircraft that operated for an NGO there, and
Mhm.
so myself and the head of the parts business for Voyager were headed there to visit the employees that we have at the base, meet with the customer
Mm.
because we were coming up to a contract renewal, and yeah, so we got to spend a couple days there.
Very
So that would be the
impressive.
most chaotic experience I've had. Thank, but got on the airplane, no, and got home all right.
Connor, you've seen a lot of changes over the last 5, 6 years in terms of business travel, especially being in the aviation industry. Can you tell us how things have changed in your world?
So, 5, 6 years ago, there was certainly no hesitation to get on an airplane and go visit customers. And I think that's a unique thing about aviation is that, across whether it be the parts side of the business or, leasing, the airline, MRO, there's people have no hesitation on getting on an airplane for, basic, introductory meetings where maybe in other industries, it takes a little bit more warming up before people are going to spend, dollars and get on an airplane and go visit people. Um, and certainly, I used to travel a lot more. Our sales representatives used to travel a lot more. And I think through the pandemic, it showed that in certain areas, you don't need to necessarily do that. And the example I'd use is we delivered airplanes to customers that I never met until 18 months after the airplane had already been there, which if you had asked me 6 years ago if that was possible, I would have said absolutely no way, can't happen. Where, it's been, we've proven that, and they're continuing existing, fruitful relationships, like they have not gone poorly. So it's been a positive experience on both sides. Now, still like to get out and visit them at least once a year, but, certainly the number of trips I've taken has gone down. Although I'd like to travel more, but as the roles
Mm,
evolve, maybe it's more important sending the sales representatives out. You don't need to send the commercial people or the contracts
mm,
people as much. And for me personally, I pick and choose what trade shows I go to now. Or before, I was going to pretty much every
mm,
single one that we would attend. Or now I kind of pick the ones that are
mm,
I get the most value out of, and I'm able to knock off a number of different meetings rather than maybe having to go see six different customers. You can meet them at the same conference. So that's certainly something I've changed from 5, 6 years ago.
That's very interesting. And I do think that seems to be more like widespread as people are really wanting to make the most of their business travels.
Hmm.
And so when you are looking at attending different events, is it the destination or you're looking to see which clients are going to be there or what's the criteria that you look at?
So for me, it's what am I trying to accomplish first? Like if we have a need to go to, if that
Mm,
we could have an opportunity to develop something, place an airplane, et cetera, then that's kind of criteria one. The second one would
mm,
be what potential customers or existing customers are going to be there. So how, will you be busy and be able to set enough, and
mm,
set good meetings? And then the third would be, location, with some to go to a conference in, Australia or, Singapore, that's quite expensive. So you want to make sure you get the value out of it. Where if you're just, going down to Phoenix or, Atlanta, that's an easier, that's an easier bill to justify, certainly. But, and I would say across, I've, certainly on our side, we've got it down to a pretty good tempo of who's going to what conferences, what are the who are the appropriate
mm,
people to send, rather than where we all would have just gone to them in the past, certainly.
mm,
Yeah, and I suppose the benefit living in a hub city, it's a lot easier for you to get from,
mm,
to almost anywhere.
Yeah,
mhm.
that was a big
Yes. And
big
that,
reason I wanted to be in Toronto, certainly.
oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Toronto is an amazing hub. And that makes me think of another. You've listed off a number of countries. Do you know how many countries you've visited at this point?
Yeah, I did it in prep for this podcast, so 38 I've been to in total. So
Nice.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good number. And funny enough, like when we were talking before this, you're like, I don't know if you said this, but it kind of came across like I maybe seen some places, but not as much as others.
mhm.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I did because I've I've been blessed to travel all over the world, but there's places like I've never been to Asia, for instance, and I've never done really any.
Mm,
The furthest south I've been on this side of the world is kind of Curacao or Costa Rica, whatever would be further south. So I haven't done anything in kind of Latin America, Brazil or Argentina, which I'd love to get to at some point, but yeah, just haven't had the opportunity yet.
yeah. I think it's like comes up to one of those themes that we hear when you're business traveling, it's almost becomes a blur and you almost don't realize how much you've done and seen. And as you say, when you're going from airport to hotel to meeting room to hotel and
Mhm.
back, like it can just pass you by so quick. But 38 countries, Connor, that's impressive.
Oh, yeah, thank you, and hopefully I can knock off a few more before I'm done.
So maybe I could ask, how has business travel changed you? How have you learned or evolved going, meeting lots of different people, experiencing lots of different cultures, seeing all these different places? How has your perspective on the world changed from that?
It it's been a great experience. It's in some aspects and unfortunately places I've traveled, it's made me very thankful to live where I do and be a
Mm,
Canadian, certainly. But it also, places that are talked about in a very negative light are still beautiful and the people are friendly. Like
mm,
I can't think of a place that I've been, where the people aren't friendly or welcoming in some way, shape, or form, right? It's a lot of places kind of get a bad rap or are, talked about as scary and and perhaps they are, but the people are still, there are still friendly people
mm,
out there and I'd also say that kind of it's been great to experience all the cultures and I'm a huge foodie, so getting to,
mm, mm.
experience, East African cuisine or, I again, having just been to Australia, I didn't really know too much, but, I have to say their barbecue, their barbecue sauce obsession kind of reinvigorated my desire for that. But, you know, it's been quite, yeah, it's been quite a journey and I certainly wouldn't change it.
What's the weirdest
Mm.
thing you've eaten?
Oh. Probably something I didn't even in Ethiopia. I forget where you have. I think it's teff, and then it's like this fermented bread that everything kind of comes in one sort of table, and you rip off a piece and then just sample
Yeah.
from it. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that would have been, but it's always been delicious. Like certainly, I do love that food. I'd say for most people, I guess, like if you're in, West in Africa, you're going to eat goat at some point. I love goat, so
Mm,
I learned that I
mm.
certainly if goat's on the menu, I'm not turning it down. But which, I think for, especially in North America, not so common you come across that necessarily.
Yeah. I know Mark has eaten some weird things. I don't,
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to my mind is like an eel sandwich I had
Mm.
in the Netherlands. It was, yeah. But yeah, Mark, you're leaning in. What is it?
No, no. I mean, my weirdest. Well, the weirdest thing was probably pig's brains,
Oh yeah,
which I had at a hot pot in China. I just couldn't get my head past the idea that I was eating brains, and it had like the look and texture of tofu, and it was
Oh, I
just.
like tofu, but I'm not sure about the brain part.
But it looked like brains.
oh
Like
yeah,
you
that
would
was.
have. You had the little squiggly lines. It was just. I just that was as much a mental block as anything. I think.
I can only imagine.
So my host knew exactly what they were doing. They were setting me up, but it was all in good fun. So it was a great experience, regardless of the outcome.
Connor, it's been such a pleasure having you visit us here. Do you have any last advice or things that you want to share with us?
I would say anyone that's starting to get into business travel or, would be to kind of take your time to experience where you are. And it can be difficult and it can, it can be a bit of burning the candle at both ends, especially if you have long days. But, you never know when you're going to get back to some place. So you got to try and make the most of the opportunities. And if you're sitting at the hotel wondering if you should book, whether it be, excursion or a tour of some place in a city,
Mm,
I would always err on the you go and do it, or you go eat where the locals do, or find if there was a restaurant at a
mm,
particular place and you're, maybe I should try it, go and try it. Try and make the most of your experience. That's the important part, because it also helps not make it more tolerable, but it provides a more positive outlook, or more positive
mm.
experience on travel, especially can be difficult when you're away from home for long periods.
I
Fantastic. That
appreciate
is great advice.
yeah, I appreciate that so much. And you do bring up on this podcast, we tend to talk about a lot of the good of business travel, but it is hard. And until you've done it, that the challenges that it brings and the time that you're away and the marathon that you have to run. But at the end of the day, as you say, making the most of it, that's brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us, Connor.
Oh,
It's a pleasure meeting you today. Have a great rest of your day.
yeah, you as well. No, really appreciate you having me on.
Well, I really enjoyed meeting Connor today. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Pamela, for getting him here on the podcast. I loved his story about the handwritten boarding pass. I don't think I've ever experienced that in all my travels, and he's definitely been to a few places I've never been to, so I'm also a little bit jealous.
Yes, no, he's lovely. And that story was really wild. And it does make me think about his country total of 38, but also implying he hasn't been to too many places yet. And that can be very common in business travel that you feel like, well, I haven't seen all these places. I haven't been to Asia yet, but he's an incredibly well traveled individual. And he's been doing it very early in his career up until now. And I just love his perspective on all of it.
And he really played on a recurring theme we're hearing about making the most of your business travels while you're there, trying to get the most experience you can in a new place, a new city. And I certainly know in the aviation industry, that's usually even harder because you are often meeting people at the airports you're flying into. So sometimes if the airports are outside the city, you don't even get to go see anything
Mm.
whatsoever. So it's pretty tough, but I think people do need to try to make the most of wherever they are.
Hmm.
Pamela, where can the good folks at home find us?
You could come visit us at the Meetings and Miles LinkedIn page, or you can check us out on our personal accounts, Pamela Wilton or Mark Peters, Mark D. Peters 17.
Thank you so much. And please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app. Give us a 5-star review, and we look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Safe travels.
Bye.